Kim Deal and Wish I Was. 11:03 the time. A very good Monday, and welcome to the Mornings with Ed show on the all-new Voice of Laguna, day 365 of the all-new Voice of Laguna. Again, my thanks to everybody that's been texting in. That continues. And yeah, I stopped answering the phone a little while ago, but thank you for the calls as well. So May was Mental Health Awareness Month, and I've made the point here since the end of May, or really since the beginning of May, that here at the Voice of Laguna, it's going to be a year-round conversation. We feel that it's that important. It is absolutely necessary to continue the conversation about mental health awareness. And with that, we're hoping to have her back several times throughout the remainder of the year. Melissa Harris is a professor of psychology who is a leading happiness facilitator at Juniper Consulting Lab right here in Laguna Beach. What they do is really a comprehensive approach to healing, where they use proven research to promote balance and well-being. They've helped hundreds of people find their sweet spot in life. We've spoken to her a few times before, and each conversation, as I've said, is more fascinating than the last. In for the conversation this morning, we welcome back to the program Professor Melissa Harris. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me. Congrats on a year.
Thank you. It just flew by. It literally just flew by the entire year, and I'm thankful for all the support from passerbys and partners, and your support for coming in several times to talk about this important subject. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So how you been since last we spoke?
Fantastic.
Okay. Good. Good.
Yeah.
Life treating you well?
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
I like my dad's approach. I called him this morning and I said, "How is today, Dad?" And he goes, "I have decided it is going to be a great day, and I can't wait for all the ways I'm proven right."
Oh, that's fantastic.
So, I've been looking for the good since our last conversation.
All right. Well, excellent. And to your dad, hats off, because that is the absolute right approach. So we have here on the program over the last couple of weeks talked about depression, and I want to eventually have you take us through an office visit or a couple of scenarios that would happen at your office. You are, of course, a happiness facilitator,
right?
And I want to talk about that, but I do want to talk about depression, and maybe you can answer my dumb guy questions. Are there different forms of depression, or is all depression just depression? And if there are different forms, why are there only a couple of general pharmaceuticals that treat it?
I love your questions, Ed.
Thank you.
You start us right every single time.
Thank you.
So there's many flavors of depression. And when we look at depression, it's important to distinguish between sadness or the blues and something that's more sustained. And so, you've dealt with a lot of tragedy in the last little while. It would be weird for you to be happy. Right. We expect that things in life are going to bring about sadness. It's when it doesn't go away, it starts impairing your functioning and your ability to have any kind of well-being or a sense of, goodness in your life, that it becomes more problematic. And when we look at different kinds, there are very organic reasons that they can be suddenly triggered, like postpartum depression, for example. That's, you have a huge hormonal dump after you give birth. You're usually going to be a little bit sad. Sleep is disrupted. There's a lot of things going on. If it doesn't go away and it becomes something that's sustained, then that's when we put that label on there, postpartum depression, which is different than clinical depression, which is something that has to do with the neurotransmitters in the brain being off balance. And so there's different kinds and different sorts and different severities for sure. Okay,
and the chemical things that happen to someone depressed, is it the opposite of chemical things that happen to someone who's feeling a sense of well-being or happy?
A wonderful relationship there between happiness and depression, because there are overlaps in the type of neurotransmitters for both. So we look at serotonin, which is what we have for regulating sleep, appetite, mood. We look at dopamine, that's our reward system in the brain. And then we look at things like endorphins. These are natural painkillers. This is something like associated with runner's high. When those are in balance in the brain, then we have a sense of well-being. When those are off balance, then that's when depression sets in. So there's definitely a relationship there between the neurotransmitters and how they're functioning. When we look at depression, it can even cause structural changes in the brain, like the hippocampus, which is sort of our inbox. That's where all the information goes. And when that's not functioning right, we can't store information long term. We can't recall it the same way. Depression also reshapes our prefrontal cortex, which is sort of the boss of the whole system. It's the one, the executive that says, do this in this order, focus on this and not this. So when there is depression, those imbalances can cause larger issues. So yeah, absolutely, there's a relationship there between the two.
Okay, and since there are so many different forms of depression, am I wrong in thinking that the pharmaceutical companies have let us down with just 2 or 3? Here, take this. It seems like a coverall
take
for
Prozac, take Wellbutrin.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
So when we look at pharmaceuticals, and one of the things that I really struggle with psychology and psychiatry is that it feels like a lot of times we are taking stabs in the dark, trial and error, right? We haven't made as much progress as in other kinds of medicine, like say internal medicine. As a system, as an organism, being human, we are exceptionally complicated. So when I say, there's these neurotransmitters that are involved in depression, we're also now finding that our gut bacteria have so much to do with our mental health and mental illness. And so it's not just this one thing, So I do try to have a more compassionate and understanding approach to how slow the progress is. But you're absolutely right. We don't have all the answers. We don't have the best medicine. That doesn't mean that if you're suffering from any kinds of depression, that it's not beneficial to go and speak to somebody that is an expert, to go talk to a doctor and say, hey, what are my options? Because there are really effective treatments that have saved lives. It's just we haven't made as much progress as I know the whole world of psychiatry is on board with. We really wish we had more tools in the toolbox.
Right. Okay. And you mentioned endorphins, which we get from exercise, and you mentioned our gut health. So is exercise and a balanced diet just as effective as pharmaceuticals, or are they, because they're a better high? I have a really cool high after working out.
Absolutely, you do.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that broccoli and sunshine and a good friend is just such a huge buffer from depression. But if you have a neurochemical imbalance where you're not absorbing the serotonin, that you're not transmitting it the right way, the receptors aren't taking it in, then no amount of broccoli and sunshine and friendship is going to fix that. Conversely, if you have huge dumps of dopamine, even the things that are good, if they're imbalanced, then we see things like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. So I love that we can look at the maximizing benefits of our choices from day to day. But when it comes to our biology, some of that is very shaped. Right. I'm fortunate my little sister's a doctor, and I spent way too many nights hanging out with Freud. So I'm always thinking it's from your head. Like everything's in your head. Right. And one time I was just, every time I would go to type an email at work, my hand would just hurt. And I kept thinking I feel like I like my job. What am I not addressing? Like every time I go to do work, I have all this pain. And then I was hanging out with my sister, the doctor, and she looked at my hand. She's like, Mel, you need to get your finger x-rayed. I'm pretty sure it's broken and healed at a 90-degree angle. What is wrong with you? And it was such a oh yeah, there can be a physical reason why it hurts to email. And so I think that looking at that balance of, it's not just your head, it can absolutely be your body. And just like I went to the doctor, I had my finger reset, and then life was a lot better. nobody gave me any grief about that. There was no shame in wearing a cast on my finger. But for some reason, we have so much stigma about needing to have some sort of pharmaceutical. It is not my go-to the first thing.
Right.
Volunteer, sunshine, all those other things first.
Right.
But sometimes it's not enough.
Right. So someone who's suffering from depression, if in fact that means that they're not eating well or not eating right, are they just exacerbating the problem?
Yeah, and it's a downward spiral. I think about it this way. Today we're planting seeds. We can plant seeds for happiness tomorrow, love, joy. But if you can't even get to your garden to plant the seed, you need some help.
Right.
And depression can be really crippling, like to the point where it's hard to brush your teeth. So to say, go and make a friend, it's just too big of a leap. And so sometimes we need that assistance. And once you get to that point, it becomes easier and easier, It's one of those things that if it gets to a point where it isn't manageable on your own,
Right.
then there's no shame in reaching out.
Right. You mentioned bipolar disorder, and I'm curious as to where that line between depression and bipolar disorder happens. Are they completely different, or are they related?
So with bipolar disorder, you have extreme highs and extreme lows.
Right.
So with depression, we call it monopolar. It's just one, right? You're just the low.
Right.
And the hard thing with bipolar disorder is when you are in the upstage, or sometimes it can even be full-blown manic, it feels really good, right?
Right.
And so sometimes it's harder to medicate that because the depression feels bad, but the mania feels so good. You don't want to just flatline it out.
Right.
And it's a really tricky one because it's constantly changing and shifting. Whereas with clinical depression, you kind of know more what you're working with.
Right.
You have extremes, highs and lows. And especially with youth bipolar, there's not a lot of medications that are approved. And so the side effects are pretty daunting when we look at using them with younger children. But yeah, it's a particularly complex diagnosis.
Right. I want to get into the specifics of kids in just a little bit. But I read where 1 in 5 Americans, 20% of us, suffer from a mental health issue at some point, and only half of those seek treatment. So, as you mentioned earlier about the stigma, is that first statistic so high and that second statistic so low because the early stages go untreated because of the stigma?
Yeah, well, I think that there's a lot of the stigma, but we also need to look at the availability of mental health.
Right.
So, you look at how many practitioners there are, how much insurance will cover it, the availability in any given neighborhood, or even, with technology, we could do Zoom therapy sessions, but some people don't even have access to that.
Right.
So access is a huge issue. Education and understanding is a huge issue. And then we do tend to blame ourselves a lot. Like when we have mental health issues, we think it's a failure on our own part. And so to reach out, it takes a lot of courage and a lot of understanding that there are things that can be done. And it's not just the pharmaceuticals. I know we started with that, but when people come in and they're struggling with not the clinical depression that has it so they can't get out of bed, but just that sense of what's the purpose,
Right.
That level,
Right.
then there are things like, okay, let's look at your exercise. We can naturally boost those endorphins. Let's look at your diet and your health, because when you don't feel well, it's really hard to feel happy. I mean, when you have the flu, that's not when you're shining bright, wanting to go do kind things for yourself and others, right?
Right. And
So.
and depressed people, if it's a lifetime of depression that's been untreated, are they good at faking happiness?
I mean, sometimes, and there are people that struggle with depression for a very long time, and I have a lot of these people that I love in my life, and I love the way that they really have almost befriended their depression, to see it as a strength. You've talked about your cynicism. It's a strength for you. You've turned it into comedy night that's amazing at Mozambique and done all these wonderful things with it. Depression can be that same kind of tool. It's a visitor. It comes and goes. It's not constant. And when we work with mindfulness, we can really see that it fluctuates, that we think of like a lifetime of clinical depression, but really some days are better than others, some moments are better than others, some seconds are better than others, and really learning to lean into those moments and see those strengths. Because when you are depressed, there's a certain tenderness that goes along with it that maybe isn't available to other people. You see things that other people maybe miss. And so even in that darkness, there are gifts, but it's really about finding enough well-being that you can use those gifts.
Well, that's clarity beyond clear. That's wonderfully stated. Thank you for that. I also read something that shocked me. The average delay between the onset of mental illness symptoms and treatment is 11 years. Again, is that a lack of access, or is a lack of recognizing that there is an issue?
Both. Right. And it's really hard. I look at my parents that have kids that are my age. I have kids ranging from 15 to 27. And we had this pandemic come along, and then it's like, okay, is this pandemic or is this depression? Is this bipolar disorder? Is this puberty? It's really hard to know. And I think that we don't want to overreact and we don't want to underreact. And if you take your kid to a therapist when they're 11, what does that mean for them? We kind of get in our heads about it. I have taught my children that, having counseling, having this third person that isn't completely biased like your parents or your best friend is a tool. And it's not a tool to be ashamed of. It's really one to embrace. Again, we're really lucky because my kids have access to it. When they became my children, I told them this means lifetime therapy on the house. I'm your mother. You're going to need it. I hope I'm the worst thing that's happened to you ever. But we all are born with things that need healing just by being born. So you need to heal from being identified as a male. I need to be identified as being a female. Even just that, there's whole storylines of wounds that we have to untangle, and then add on any kind of socioeconomic status, any kind of family issues, anything in there. Those are all things that we've been given, that we've just inherited by being born. And some of us can do beautifully healing without a professional. Other people, it's really a benefit. And especially if there is a physiological reason for the mental illness going on, then it's really hard to have that well-being just from broccoli and exercise. Right. Not that those aren't important.
Right. No. Thank you. So we're gonna have to do a little math here.
Okay.
Because what I just said was that the average delay between the onset of mental illness symptoms and treatment is 11 years. Mm-hmm. Also, 50% of all lifetime mental illness begins by the age of 14, 75% by the age of 24. Mm-hmm. So taking into account the above statistic, which was the 11-year period, can mental illness actually start as young as 3 years old? And how do you spot it in a 3-year-old?
So, that's hard. Have you hung out with a lot of 3-year-olds? They all seem a little bit like...
Yeah, something's going on there.
Right.
Beyond cruelty to animals where it's obvious, or cruelty to the siblings, which is obvious. 3 years, yeah, you're right. So
it's a little young for a diagnosis. Okay. A lot of the behavior that you would see is pretty common in a 3-year-old is going to sort itself out by 10 or 11 or 12. Okay. I really do believe that having open conversations about mental health and mental wellness as a family starting young, just to have that in place is really important. And, in our family with my children, we would talk about, what do you do on your dark days? What gets you through those hard moments? And those were just part of the conversations naturally. So it wasn't all of a sudden when they were 15, all of a sudden this awkward conversation, hey, I think you might be suffering. Right. But just, hey, I'm having a really hard day. And so because of that, I'm going to reach out to a friend,
Right.
or I'm going to meditate for 20 minutes and then we're going to do bedtime routine because I'm really struggling. So modeling it and having it as part of our open conversations, and part of that delay, when we look at that wasn't something my parents were taught to do. And that's not a shame point on them. It's
Right.
just the reality of it. These are newer conversations. We haven't been modeled great ways. We're still figuring that out. But it is our responsibility to do better, because now we know. We have a whole month dedicated, right?
Right. Just one. We should have
Just
more,
one.
but
Right,
just
right.
one, yes.
But, just having those conversations with my kids, I'm like, sometimes you're going to be struggling and it's going to be hard for you to articulate that. What are some things as your mother I can look for? And it is sometimes like my room's really messy. And when I go in my kids' room, I'm getting choked up and I see dishes everywhere. I don't think, what's wrong with you? I think, how can I support you? What kind of love do you need? Because I can tell you're hurting and you're struggling right now. So it doesn't always look how we think it does. It can be, inability to do laundry, homework, dishes, and that part, that's where we see that delay, because it's just ambulance. Are you just being a punk ass teenager,
Right.
or are you suffering? And so I think that's where we see those timeline delays.
And as a parent, change in sleep habits, and
Right.
these are all the
Right.
things we look for.
Yeah, older kids, younger
Right.
kids, 9 months old, they're going to be changing their sleep
Right.
habits every 5 minutes.
Right.
But sleep is a huge one. We don't really talk much about that. I had the honor of going to Mozambique and seeing your comedy show last Wednesday.
Thank you for calling it an honor.
It was
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank you.
I
And
don't-
is there I want you to continue your point, but is there something kind of crazy about me taking tragedy and immediately making fun of it?
I think it's a beautiful coping.
Okay.
And you know what? You did it in a way where it was common humanity, where you can share that and turn it into something that's a shared experience. We've all had loss and hurt and suffering, and to be able to come together and be there with you, it was beautiful.
Well, thank you.
You
Thank
did that very gracefully.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
One of the comedians said, "Who here gets good sleep?" And all my friends looked at me because they know I'm kind of sleep,
The sleep czar.
Right. Like, it really is important. And so with teenagers, one of the things that we're seeing is their mental health is hugely impacted by their school schedules not accommodating their type of sleep and their rhythms.
Right.
And when we don't have enough sleep, we have a really hard time with emotional regulation. It throws off our neurotransmitters. It ages us.
Right.
It impacts our memory. And so the comedian was like, well, what do you do for good sleep? And I was like, this is going to just be the most boring conversation ever. But, in our house, we follow the 3-2-1, 3 hours before bed, no eating, 2 hours before bed, no more drinking, 1 hour before bed, no screens. And that's minimum
Right.
sleep.
Right.
You know,
That's some good
hygiene.
parenting right there. That's some good stuff right there.
Well, it's good for sleep.
Sleep, yeah.
So just having that helps with the mental health piece hugely. And
Right.
and we don't give enough conversations around that. We are really asking a lot of teenagers, and we're almost seeing sleep as a weakness in adulthood.
Right.
It's a bragging right. Like, I don't need sleep, I drink coffee.
Right.
Or I drink so much coffee, then at night I have to drink alcohol to fall asleep, and it really disrupts the whole cycle, and that's a huge part of mental health is sleep. So if you do notice sleep disruptions in your teenagers,
Right.
then maybe buckle down harder on the sleep hygiene, but also it can mean other things going on too. And just having open conversation. If you get it earlier, why suffer for 11 years? That's a long time to really not know that there are happier ways.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Again, wonderfully stated. And is the most important question we can ask of our friends or family members is, how are you feeling? And will we always get an honest response? Because sometimes you can ask a friend, hey, how you feeling? Fine. And they're not fine.
Yeah. Oh, the word feelings, it's just so I don't know. I hate that that's so important because it sounds so cheesy.
It does.
Like, how are you feeling?
Right.
But yeah, checking in. social connections is really one of the biggest predictors for mental well-being overall. When we look at the longest study that's been done on development, it started in 1938. Let me see, I have my notes here. Harvard study. Robert Waldinger is the one that's doing it now. They found that social connection was the thing that gave people's life the most meaning. And on their deathbed, they were like saying nothing about their money, their cars, their jobs. It was all about the relationships. When we look at health, so not just mental health, but physical health, if you have those close connections, then both are boosted. And, think about it. If you have a friend and you're feeling sick, they're the one that's going to bring you soup or make sure you're taking your vitamins or going for a walk. And so those social connections, that's a really huge piece. So how are you feeling? I think you answer it more honest with the people you feel those connections to. Interestingly enough, as part of this study at Harvard, they asked people, if you had a crisis in the middle of the night, how many people could you call that could help you out? And so just answering that for yourself right now, is it nobody? Is it 1? Is it 12? And that is going to be the biggest predictor of how well you feel. So how happy you are, how much meaning you feel during your day. And also going back to the cheesy side of things, that means that we need to put effort there. So you talked about, you go for this run, you feel so great, you have this high. We go to the gym every day. We don't think, okay, I did it once, never going to do it again. But we really need to cultivate and nurture those relationships and those social connections. When I was a professor and I was teaching these classes, I would say, okay, we're going to pause for 5 minutes and you're going to text somebody that you've been missing and just say, hey, was thinking about you. And then to see the ripple effect of the whole rest of the day, maybe the week. I had one student who reached out to her 4th grade teacher and said, I'm becoming a teacher because of you. And how huge that was for both sides. And so we don't really put enough focus on that piece of the picture for our well-being and our happiness and our mental health. And if you are suffering from depression or anything else, having those connections, they might be the people that can figure it out and get you help when maybe you aren't willing to do it yourself.
Someone's car alarm going off on the other side. Thank you for that, by the way. So if you're just joining us, Melissa Harris is a professor of psychology, a leading happiness facilitator at Juniper Consulting Lab. Last month was Mental Health Awareness Month, but we are going to be covering it year-round here at the Voice of Laguna. And for someone who recognizes that they're depressed, let's say someone who knows I'm suffering from depression right now, can they treat it themselves? Someone who's depressed, if they exercise more, if they stop drinking and smoking weed, is that enough? And how long should they give those things time to work before seeking professional help?
It absolutely can be enough just to change your behavior patterns. But you remember that we have these neurotransmitters. Part of their job is that motivation. So the motivation can actually be shut down because of the depression, making it harder to say, okay, I'm going to get up and go for a 5-mile run and then eat kale for breakfast. That just might not be it. It kind of gets down to those, can you plant the seeds of happiness? Do you have enough energy to cultivate that? And if not, then don't wait horribly long. If you do have the ability to make those shifts, giving up alcohol, which we know is a depressant, is huge. If you eat healthier, there have been studies that say you eat fruit and vegetables one day, you see a mood increase boost the next day. If you can reach out to a friend, family member, do something fun, go laugh at comedy. My very first research study I ever did was looking at depression and humor. So looking at, can you laugh away your sadness? And the answer was, as long as you're not clinically depressed, then a little bit of blues can actually be disrupted. Think about the kind of music that you listen to. If you're listening to really sad music, you're bringing that out. Sometimes that's healthy. We know crying helps reset a lot of things in the body. But if you're listening to sad music 24/7, maybe throw in a little hip hop and move a little bit, you know?
Yeah, don't go to the Dirge channel and listen to just dirges all day long, right?
And then you and I had a conversation about being around vortexes of happiness in human form. Hang out with happier people too. We know emotions are contagious. If you are sad and all your friends are sad, that's going to be one big sad vortex.
Right.
So bring in some happy people and share time with them. And really, there are plenty of things that we can do besides just the therapy and the medication. A therapist is not going to just probably give you a pill. They're going to say, we need to focus on all these things, because it really is looking at the whole picture.
Right.
So.
And thank you for mentioning the therapist not just going to give you a pill, because I kind of want to go back to the pharmaceutical aspect of this for just a moment. And you had broken your finger, and you had to reset the finger. And I'm hoping they didn't have to. Did they re-break it?
Oh yeah, they totally re-broke it.
Oh my God! Okay,
yeah, but look how straight it is.
Yeah, it looks great. Great looking finger now, but I'm sure the pain was excruciating when they had to re-break it. So with that in mind, and the fact that yes, you had a cast on, I know that some people have to take mood-altering drugs for their conditions, but are mood-altering pharmaceuticals just a Band-Aid for a problem that requires a cast, for instance?
If it's just the pill that you're taking, then yeah. You need to be doing all of the things. And really the goal is to be on the minimal amount of medication possible, because there are side effects. There's serious side effects. And we want to minimize that. There's not a side effect to sunshine and broccoli and friendship, right? That's the same as you take a pill, you can have a bad reaction and it can actually turn you suicidal. So we know that there are really harsh consequences that go along with that. So we want to do it minimally. And a lot of times it can be one of those things where it's like, let's just get you jump started in life for a while, so that you can start planting those seeds on your own, and we're going to wean you off of it. But again, that would be under the care of a doctor that will say, we're going to start with this, and then we're going to slowly take it out as you have the ability to nurture yourself and take care of yourself and really do the things that can facilitate that well-being.
Have you done any research on hallucinogenics helping mental illness?
Yes, I have. I think it's a fascinating topic. Michael Pollan wrote that book, How to Change Your Mind.
Right.
And then there was a documentary. And then I follow it pretty closely because there haven't been very many changes in this area in a long time. And this one's kind of shaken up the field a little. Right.
How so? If you don't mind, maybe the physiology of the psychedelics to the brain and
Right. So first of all, I want to say, don't be doing psychedelics on your own, especially as a youngin'.
Right,
That's
right,
not
yeah.
a good
First thing,
idea.
that's a disclaimer, right?
There's my disclaimer. Responsible parent here, still parenting everyone. And the reason why I say age is really important in this is you have to have a really good, strong sense of self. So think about how much that changes. You know, when you look at yourself at 12 to 16, you're largely different. Right. 35 to 40, not as many differences and changes, right? There's some stability there. With psychedelics, things like ketamine treatment or psilocybin microdosing, we've seen some really promising research in looking at untreatable depression from other modes. There seems to be something about the integration process while you're in this altered state. And the integration of not only trauma and things that have happened to you, but things like gender dysmorphia or huge disconnects, you're able to pull down those defenses, the mental defenses that are in place, to really look at it head on. And I've said this before on your show, you know, you shine light on darkness, the darkness automatically goes away. If we can't even look at what is causing our depression or our pathology, if it is trauma related, not biological related, then how are we really going to address it? And some things are so hard, we can't even let ourselves talk about it or acknowledge it. So it just brings down that curtain so that you can look at the trauma, you can look at the deeper things that maybe you just can't when you're in your sober, blocked state. But, there are amazing doctors that are working with that. And it's been not only for psychological pain, but physical pain. And there's clearly a relationship there. If you have chronic physical issues, it's so much harder to be happy. It's so much harder to get those endorphins from movement because it's hard to move. It's harder to have that compassion and that love for people because you just hurt. So even with looking at like ketamine and physical pain, we know that there's that association there in helping people. It can help you see things differently. So when we look at people who are facing death, maybe they have a terminal illness, when they've done ketamine or psilocybin therapy, that fear of death is removed. And part of it is you lose that sense of self or that sense of ego, and you can experience the oneness. I know this sounds so cheesy I'm taking you back to the 1960s, which I was not alive for, but it really is that oneness that can bring us peace. And so much of our suffering is from feeling disconnected from others and disconnected from right now. In fact, I would say I can't really think of a mental illness that doesn't fall in that category.
I'm reading some text connects as you're talking here, and there's nothing but thanks to you across the board. So thank you very much. And again, thank you so much for the clarity so far, and being able to answer whatever I'm throwing your way. I love the fact that I just pitch you a ball and it's a home run.
Well, one of these times it won't be, but that will be my human moment, and I will get over it. We all will.
Okay. I want to talk for a moment about anxiety.
Okay.
And most people have experienced just regular anxiety. I'm not talking about clinical anxiety, which might be might result in a full-on panic attack, but the run-of-the-mill kind of that leaves you uncomfortable from time to time.
Right.
Am I crazy in thinking that it's kind of a warning system that we all need? Do we need that anxiety?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a reason it's developed, and I love to look at everything from the evolutionary perspective. That's just my orientation towards understanding humans in general, from mating to what we eat, everything. Right. I like to see the evolution of it. Think about if we didn't have anxiety, we would have never made it here, right? And we have anxiety because it does serve a purpose. If we see a rope and we get anxious and we think it's a snake and we run, there's no fault in that, right? We lived. Right. But if we saw a snake and we didn't get anxious and we thought it was a rope, we could be harmed.
Right.
So anxiety has its purpose. The problem is that you have a stressor, you have anxiety, and the job of our body is to go back to a neutral nervous system, right?
Okay.
We don't do that. We have chronic anxiety. So if you will right now, put your hand on your heart and your belly. If you can do this listening, do the same. And then just take a few breaths and notice where you feel your breath. If you feel it in your chest, that's anxious breathing. That's fight or flight breath. Most of our listeners right now are probably in some sort of variation of fight or flight breath. Okay. They are anxious and their bodies know it, and they're reacting to it. If you have these deep belly breaths where your breath is going all the way in and your belly button is expanding out and sinking down, that's your calm, relaxed breath. Most people do not have that because we have low-grade chronic anxiety. And that stress that we have in life doesn't actually go away once the trigger is gone. We don't actually come back down to that calm baseline.
Beautifully explained. Thank you. And right now, my hand is on both my chest and my stomach, and I'm...
Where are you at?
I'm belly.
Your belly?
I think I'm belly. I think if I'm not crazy, I'm belly. So,
it looked like your belly.
All right.
But you're in your zone. I was intentionally doing belly breath because we have this bidirectionality in our bodies. So we tell our bodies we're nervous. It breathes really shallow breaths and conserves energy. But also, as we shallow breathe, we tell ourselves that we have a reason to be afraid. So if you do those belly breaths intentionally, it can help you bring it back down.
Right. Tell me this, and I will in a moment ask you to take us through an office visit at your place. But I try and think that how you make others feel about themselves says the most about you.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And should we wake up with that thought. I mean, is that something we should carry with us all day?
That's a beautiful thought. What would the world be like if we did that?
Thank you.
I mean, I think of how different our interactions would be.
Right.
And when we look at this idea that emotions and happiness are contagious,
Right.
just being around one person that really shows that it can change
Right.
your day, your thinking, for sure.
Well, thank you. Take us through a couple of office visit scenarios at Juniper Consulting. People walk in with obviously different conditions and different needs and different expectations. Take us through what happens when they walk through the door for the first time.
So we do a few assessments, and we look who's going to be the best fit in the office. If people are suffering from things like trauma, clinical depression, then we have an amazing counselor who works with that group of people. They can work with me as well at the same time. Mine is more focusing on the behaviors that you do from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep that promote happiness. And so you could be working with Jennifer Rowe, our licensed therapist, on really getting to the root of some of the trauma issues, while at the same time coming in and trying out different kinds of meditation or mindfulness techniques with me, looking at the ways that gratitude can help change our brain structure, looking at the diet, the exercise, the more holistic way. We have Molly Behunin in our lab, and she will work with people specifically about diet and exercise and make sure that it matches up with their physiological needs. She's an Ayurvedic practitioner, so she works with balancing. It's all about balancing. And one of the things that I love about that approach is we really know that diversity in what we eat is important, and that's a huge component of Ayurveda. Is we want to look at that gut health because it plays into so many other things of how we feel. So it would depend on what people really need. They could work with all three of us. We've had people come in and do that, and that's a beautiful thing. It just depends on what people are looking for. But the idea is that we really can create so much of our happiness and our well-being. We talked about this before. About 50% is our genetics, depending, and then 40% is what we do. Only 10% is circumstance. That's the least important part, yet we talk so much about circumstance being the determinant of our happiness and our well-being. It's really not. So if we can change what we do, how we do it, why we do it, and have more awareness around it, then there can be a lot more well-being and happiness.
Those are fascinating percentages. 10% is only 10% is circumstance. That
I
is
know, yeah.
Yeah, that's a mind blower.
Right. People will argue with me about that one because, you say things like, Ed, if you won the lottery today,
right,
it's really not going to make that big of a difference. It's only be 10% of your happiness. And people were like, well, but let me win the lottery and then I'll prove you wrong. But the flip side of that is amazing too. You have a divorce, you become a quadriplegic, 10%, only 10%. So the biggest extremes really don't last as long. It can be really hard in that moment, but when we look about a year out, it's just not going to change that much. It really is about how you drink your tea in the morning and the people that you talk to throughout the day. Like that's the bigger piece.
Right. There's a feeling of well-being and happiness in the comfort zone of the things that make you happy, and it doesn't have to be winning the lottery. At all.
Yeah,
at
for
all.
sure.
Right. It's the
normal.
normal
Actually,
day.
if we look at lottery winners, they don't tend to fare they don't fare so well down the road. So.
And this initial assessment at Juniper Consulting. Is that just day one and then you're done and then come back, or can they go right from the initial assessment into, hi, this is where we are. Let's start the treatment now.
Yeah, so we actually start right then and there.
Okay, good.
It very much is set up how I had the classroom before, which is we want to experience the research. Right. So the research is my reason why for doing something. I would not meditate 20 minutes twice a day unless I knew what it was doing for my brain and my body and for the people around me. And so I think that the why for me is really rooted in me actually doing it over and over and over again. And I find that people tend to be like that. So we go over the whys and the research, and we start immediately. And it's just like going to the gym for your body. We have mindfulness practices that we do each week. We have happiness challenges for the week. We have readings and assignments based on how people take in information throughout the week, just so that it's on our mind and it's a priority. And these things, most of us have a sense of what makes us feel good. I'm there to put the fire, to say, like, I'm holding you accountable. I'm going to check back in with you. And so we start right then and there based on strengths. We usually don't start with the very hardest things. So if, looking at the assessments, maybe forgiveness is the thing that you're struggling with the most, we probably wouldn't start with that first. We would build up to that and then use the skills that we have from all of the other strengths that you possess to take on the forgiveness.
Like building blocks. Right?
Absolutely.
It's absolute building blocks, by the way. So May was Mental Health Awareness Month. We've been saying here at the radio station, and we will continue to say throughout the year, that it is a year-round conversation we want to have. I know you're going to take a little time off in the summer, but we will absolutely look forward to having you back here. I love these conversations.
It's always so fun.
And our listeners apparently find that they love them as well.
Thank you.
How do we find you online and storefront? Where exactly are you?
I am here in Laguna Beach. I'm 1854 South Pacific Coast Highway, number 1. Positive Psychology Wellness Lab. We just call it the lab for short. I didn't want to go into an office, so it's a lab.
It's a lab.
We do lots of experiments there. And online, I'm juniperhappinessconsulting.com. And I will be in and out for the summer, but we do community meditations once a week once the school year starts back up again. Because community is such a huge part of happiness, right. I felt that just really needed to be instrumental. So if you can't afford any of the services provided, then there's still the community night, and we get together and we do the mindfulness, we do the meditation. You have amazing people that are also really putting mental health and well-being as a priority in their lives, and that, boosts you up just right there.
I already know the answer to this, but while you're gone, you're still going to be checking on your clients and making sure they're doing their homework.
Absolutely. And we still have Molly Behunin and Jennifer Rowe there the entire summer. So feel free to reach out and connect with them through our website, because they don't stop and go hang out on their family ranch like I do.
Well, it's got to be. It has to be a cathartic experience for you, I'm sure.
My family, when I think of that question of who I could call in the middle of the night, I lucked out because my best friends are genetically related to me, and I've reached out plenty of times in the middle of the night. I know I wouldn't have made it this far without them. So we get together and we laugh about really sad things that probably are inappropriate.
Okay.
And so it's great. It's fun.
I love knowing that. Melissa Harris, a professor of psychology, leading happiness facilitator at Juniper Consulting Lab. If you need that email address or their actual storefront address, again, here in Laguna Beach, just reach out to me. I'll be glad to give it to you. Professor Harris, thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you.
Loved having you. Looking forward to having you back. 11:51 the time.
The Mornings with Ed show will be back after this.
The city of Laguna Beach wants to remind visitors that Laguna Beach is a smoke-free community. We ask that you refrain from smoking while enjoying the crisp, clean air of our beaches and the bright, fresh, welcoming spirit of our merchants,